And Amy, so how are Peyton and Eli liking the Common Core there over at Blaine? They enjoying that? Can you figure out their math homework?
No, I tried, and you had to explain why 6 minus 2 equals 4. You have to explain how you can get there.
Well, I'll tell you, one critic of Common Core was rather persuasive. Watch this interview over the weekend that was on the Daily Caller, the Ginny Thomas interview series that she does. The woman is Sam Sorbo, who is the wife of actor Kevin Sorbo. Mm-hmm. You know, or what was he, Hercules, right?
Yeah.
Sam, his wife, is former model and biomedical engineer from Duke. So this is a sharp...
So she's a smart cookie.
Yeah, she is sharp, and she's got a sharp criticism for the teachers' unions and for Common Core.
Let's talk about bullying, if you don't mind, because we know that we have a problem with bullying in our schools. And yet the head of the teachers' union, Michael Mulgrew, said, I will punch you in the face and I will shove you on the ground if you try to take away my Common Core. Okay? Now, that's bullying language. Mm-hmm. It's bullying behavior to sort of scream that at somebody. But the most important part of that is the applause that he got from all the teachers.
Yeah. Well, Michael McGrew, he likes his Common Core, clearly, if he's willing to punch people in the face over it. I think if he tried to punch our next guest in the face, though, he would get more than he bargained for from the profile picture of Dr. Duke Pesta, who is an associate English professor at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and about as big a fan of Common Core as Mrs. Sorbo is. And we're pleased to be joined by Duke Pesta now. Professor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much for having me today.
So you have been an outspoken critic of Common Core for a couple of years now. Give us kind of your general critique, the thesis of your critique.
Wow, it is a complicated question. I always take a question like that and break it into two issues. Number one, Common Core represents the greatest appropriation of power over education by the federal government in American history. It didn't begin this process. Goals 2000, No Child Left Behind, all those, even the creation of the Department of Education began this process, but Common Core really moves it forward. And number two, whenever the federal government has that kind of control over something as central as education, inevitably they are going to pound all sorts of indoctrination and non-education stuff into it, which is what they've done. So it's dangerous in terms of what our kids are learning, and it strips power and control of education away from local communities and parents, moms and dads, who are the primary stakeholders of public education.
Yeah, well, in Chicago, I mean, our school, we needed every federal grant dollar we could get, so of course we accepted Common Core at CPS. But has studies shown, is it effective? Are our kids learning more? Are they better prepared for high school or college, for that matter?
The reality is that Common Core was never tested. There were no measurements. There were no research-based scientific studies done to see if Common Core would work. So it was sold to Illinois schools on a lie that it was better than what you had. And every metric we've used since it's been implemented shows it's failing. So bad is the performance of Common Core that most states aren't even revealing the test scores that the kids have taken because they are such a nightmare.
Well, what about the pedagogy behind Common Core? The art of the teaching, is it just kids have to get used to a different style of learning, and you're catching kids kind of midstream with learning the way that, say, me and Amy learned growing up versus how you have to learn to do long division today, and these stories that we hear, these anecdotes we hear from, like, chemical engineer who can't do his son's chemistry homework and so forth. So give us your assessment of the pedagogy, I suppose, is the question.
Well, and far too many people think that Common Core is just a set of standards, and I'm glad that you guys know it's not. You know that it's also, in order to reach the standards, there's a very particular kind of pedagogy, teaching, and curriculum that goes into it. And this curriculum is a nightmare. It's not designed to make kids master subject areas. This curriculum is not designed, as you said already, it's not designed to make young kids able to do math at high levels. This is what I call social justice pedagogy. It is designed to make sure that all kids end up in the same place. I mean, literally, the comment in Common Core means that all kids are going to come out with the same education. And if you're going to give 60 million American school kids to the same standard, by definition, it has to be a lower standard. So we're putting achievement behind our twisted notions of what equality is. So all kids will have the same math degree. All kids will know the same amount of math. That means that kids who really know math are going to have to take steps back. And that's what's happening here.
That is a huge point. That is a huge point.
Yeah, but they told us, too, that that we wanted to be competitive with students in Japan and in Finland. Did you hear anything such as that?
Yeah, of course. We want to be, as a nation, we want to be competitive with nations that do math at high levels. Japan does not. The East Asian countries who are really kicking our butts in math preparation for kids, they don't do Common Core. The other thing you got to know about these East Asian countries we're comparing ourselves to is not every kid in those countries gets the kind of education American school kids do. In places like Japan, China, Indonesia, it's not every kid that gets to get advanced degrees or even go to advanced high school. So they're selecting, those countries are selecting kids, they're weeding out kids very young, and only those who show particular aptitudes move forward. It's like apples and oranges. We send all of our kids to school. And so we're going to try to mimic them by lowering the overall standards so our kids come out uniformly. But that won't work because we haven't filtered before that. The whole comparison is absurd.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't know if you ever saw the documentary 2 Million Minutes, but it was really interesting. It compared the 2 million minutes that a student spends in high school in Indiana to India to China. And what you're saying, Dr. Pesta, is certainly part of what came through very clear in that documentary. And the other part is, well, American kids do more extracurricular activities than some of their foreign counterparts. So they're going out for the cheerleading squad or playing football, basketball, and baseball and having kind of a more complete academic and growth experience through their formative years in school than some of their counterparts. So there are trade-offs, but those are trade-offs that we're making fully conscious.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you're exactly right. That is true. That is happening. But if you look at what's going on in our American schools, it's not just that our kids are doing a lot of things outside of class that are actually impeding their progress in the classroom, because they are. And some parents would argue that that's a worthy trade-off. But you look at what's going on in the actual classroom, what's happening when our kids are in school. We're getting all sorts of stuff that have nothing to do in the day-to-day classroom with education. All of this science classes have been transformed into lectures on global warming. English class now has been riddled with white privilege pedagogy. Our kids in English class aren't reading good books at high levels. Our kids in math class are doing a lot of other things that have nothing to do with math. Our kids in history class aren't learning history. They're learning racial grievances. And so we're wasting class time. I could live with my kids doing 2 or 3 hours of extracurriculars in the evening if they were getting a real education in the classroom.
Yeah, so how can we make Common Core go away? I mean, really, it's ruined a lot of families, and quality time that they'd normally spend together becomes fights in the household over doing the homework.
I don't think you can. I honestly don't. 5 years ago when I started giving these talks, and I've talked about 500 times in 46 states, I've testified before 22 state legislatures. It's not going away. The purpose of Common Core and the iterations of it from No Child Left Behind back, the purpose was primarily to cede control to the feds. It's done that. You're not going to take it away unless you destroy the Department of Education, unless you go through and change how teacher colleges go about their preparing of young teachers, and it's not going to happen. Not in our lifetime. And so I think the only real safe place for your kids is to homeschool them or put them in private schools that are Common Core free. I don't see a solution for kids who are in school now.
Yeah, right. And the creeping nature of it and how quickly the government creeps, to your point, is a lot of Catholic schools. The Chicago Archdiocese has essentially adopted Common Core for their schools. It's crazy.
Yeah, about 70% of Roman Catholic diocese schools took Common Core because they were terrified that their kids wouldn't be able to pass the ACT exams and get into college. And there is that as well. It's a big problem across the board. About half the Methodist, half the Lutheran schools are taking Common Core. So even the private schools aren't necessarily safe. You just got to do some homework.
Right, and to your point, that these are the private schools, and as you're saying, Common Core moves everybody away from the Western canons, away from a classical liberal education that private schools offered as the value add compared to their government school counterparts for all of this social justice scholarship, quote unquote. And so, I mean, it's just, I guess it's selling your soul for 30 pieces of silver to some extent.
Yeah, that is the main takeaway from Common Core. It is not an educational program. It is a social justice program. It is not about making your kids ready for college. It's about turning them into good little progressives who don't necessarily know much, but who are activist warriors for bad ideas. And we're seeing that manifested even in places where it absolutely doesn't belong, like math class.
He is Dr. Duke Pesta. He's a associate English professor at University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Dr. Pesta, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me today. Always great talking to you.
And let's quickly go to Judy in Lamont. Hey, Judy.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. All I can say is God bless Dr. Duke. I went to 2 of those 500 talks, and in one of the talks, he just looked at the audience and one of those come to Jesus moments, and he said, you have to save your children. And that was it. I was done. I said from that moment on, I said I am homeschooling my son, and I get emotional because it is, it's a big thing, and it's a hard thing for people to do. But I'm doing it, and we're in his program, and we're starting at 10 o'clock this morning. And my son couldn't be happier. It's the school has great people, but he lost a year in math, he lost a year in English, and because they were doing Common Core, he was A's in grade school. All the thing gets the high school integrated math, integrated science, integrated this. And it's exactly what Dr. Duke. So anybody out there, go see Dr. Duke. Anybody in public school or anything, go search him out. He's all over the web and the internet. YouTube him. He's funny. He'll tell you exactly what it is, and he uses their words. It's not his words. He's so refined, and he knows how to put a presentation together that's warm and charming. But in the end, you'll sit there and you'll say, I'm homeschooling my kid no matter what it takes, and it's really not that expensive. So Amy, Peyton, and Eli, go to Dr. Duke. You can do it online, and they will be happy, happy kids. And there's so many ways to do it now. His looks like one of the best that I've seen out there. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So go find Dr. Duke, everybody.
Thanks very much, Judy. Appreciate
okay,
it.
thanks. Bye-bye.
It's new.